Jimmy Carr broke my brain with this one. Everyone is jealous of what you've got. No one is jealous of how you got it.
I love that quote.
My God. People see the trophies, but not the training ground.
Everybody wants the view, but no one wants the climb. I love it. But the people who win love the climb. And the real mountain has no peak. And so the view is always present the whole way up the climb. And
but it seems to me, to push back there, it seems to me like a lot of the time you're head down, the pleasure comes from the climb, not the view.
Sure.
For you. Again, maybe sort of non-typically constructed from a psychological perspective. So that was nice. That was diplomatic. So what would you say, and this is something that I think, with these episodes that we do, I often want to try and get you to push a little bit more to adapt your ideas and your insights for people who maybe do have a little bit more of that emotionality that comes through to try and sort of soften this up. Look, I understand that people need more degrees of freedom than me, typically. I understand that people probably can't get themselves to the level of work that I can. So do you ever sort of play with that idea of, okay, what does a little bit of view taking in look like whilst we're climbing?
I think a lot of the discontent comes from the judgment people have about what they should or should not do along the way. And so they take my description as prescription for what they should do. So I describe my life and then people think I'm prescribing what they should do. And it couldn't be further from the truth. If you want to take a break at every 2 steps and take in the view, do it. I mean, in 4 generations, no one will remember your name. And so enjoy the view if you feel like it. I just happen to enjoy how much I can see that I can do. That's what I enjoy. And I feel like I am most present when I work. And so I'm not going to go into work-life balance, whatever, because we already know where that conversation goes. But people have a harder time accepting that someone can just work all the time and truly love it. And I define that by there's nothing else I would rather do at any time. And so for me, I feel like I exercise absolute freedom in my life. And freedom is reinforcing for all species, dogs, cows, fish, humans. Freedom is one of the most positively reinforcing thing that people have, that everyone wants freedom.
Everybody wants to be able to say, fuck you.
Right. But once you say fuck you, you have to do something, because you can't just stand there and saying fuck you over and over again for hours for the rest of your life. You start to do something, and that thing that you choose to do after you say fuck you is what you want to do.
That's an interesting point. So there are certain things that you have to do to get to the point where you don't have to do things you don't want to do. And then when you're liberated, there is a whole new challenge now, because it's a completely blank map where you have to actually define that. That's one of the things, about working for yourself. There's a lot of derogation about 9-to-5s and university education and kind of the typical track and stuff. Like, bro, you should be very cautious about criticizing people that have more normal salaried 9-to-5 jobs, because I look at most of my friends and they can't not take their work home with them. So for certain psychological makeups, who's more free? The person that actually gets to shut their work laptop at 5 p.m. In France, they've got this new policy now where you can't email staff after, I think it's maybe 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. at night in certain businesses, to try and sort of enforce this work-life balance and stuff like that. So for certain people, you're shaking your head. What's your problem?
I mean, my first thought was, well, France just took its irrelevant economy and just made it less relevant. And secondarily, the person who made that rule is someone who fundamentally doesn't understand human behavior. So if they were to pass that rule for me, then what they did is they actually made my life worse.
This was the thing when Elon took over Twitter. So it's one of my favorite stories over the last couple of years. Elon buys Twitter. Elon finds out that 80% of the staff base just drink smoothies and go on hot girl walks all day. And he fires them.
Yeah.
and says, this team, it was him and a bunch of Asian dudes, selfie. And he says, this is the team that's going to run Twitter now. And he puts, I think, a job posting out, maybe on Twitter. And he says, I want people who want to work harder than they ever have on the most difficult problems in the world and blah, 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 blah. And he got tons of shit for it. And they said, this is a regressive policy for industry. This is taking people back to sending kids up the chimneys and so on and so forth. And it's just a complete failure of theory of mind that there are people out there for whom that is the job advert. I want to work harder than I ever have on the most difficult problems in the world at an intensity that would kill most people, because that's where I derive pleasure and satisfaction from. That's the best situation that I could hope for. And trying to take your model of, well, yeah, but what about my maternity leave? And yeah, but what about, jeans Fridays? And yeah, but what about, hot girl walks? All of that is, those are things that people don't want. Adding those in gets in the way of the thing that they do want.
I think a lot of the confusion around the people who are wanting to work harder than they are, or don't like that I work hard or that you work hard, think that they take this statement as a judgment or a criticism on how they live their life. And it's because on the other side of that free line, you're like, okay, I'm now free. I have a blank slate. If I do something or you do something that they deem painful for them now, or something that they don't enjoy, they then say, you are suffering and that is bad. And both of those things I reject wholeheartedly. First, you don't know that I'm suffering because you have no idea what's going on inside of me. And also, what does your judgment mean at all to me? If you're a beginner, just figuring out how to make your first dollar, I'm a co-owner of Skool.com, Skool.com. You can start for free. It's a cool setup that we have to help people do it. And right now, 54.1% of people who start a paid community on Skool make money. So we have put a tremendous amount of effort, Sam and I, into trying to remove all barriers and all friction for people who are getting started so that they have literally no excuses.
It's a way better strike rate than OnlyFans.
I don't know what their strike rate is, but we've worked really hard to. If you saw the amount of detail, I mean, maybe you heard some of this from the podcast, but the amount of detail that went into like where buttons go and what things we remove was actually a big one. Was how can we so pare this down so that people don't get overwhelmed? Because the number one reason people cancel or decide not to do something is overwhelm. And so we're like, okay, how can we funnel action into the clearest possible steps that people go step 1, step 2, step 3, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, this actually worked. And so it's been really cool to see the thousands of people who have made their first dollar, which is what I make all my content about it to begin with. And so it's been the ride of my life. It's been awesome.
Okay, I appreciate you, man.